Hello and welcome everybody to Mr. Austin's first video. This one is going to be talking about the Peasants' Revolt. So this one's for year 7. The causes of the Peasants' Revolt is what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I am going to tell you or talk to you about 5 of the main causes of the Peasants' Revolt, and this will hopefully help you understand the Peasants' Revolt a little bit better. So the first cause of the Peasants' Revolt that I'm going to talk about is the poll tax. P-O-L-L tax. The poll tax. The poll tax was a tax that everybody in England had to pay. The rich had to pay it and the poor, the peasants, had to pay it. But the peasants thought the poll tax was really unfair. And that is because the peasants had to pay exactly the same amount of money as the rich. Everybody paid the same amount of money. So the rich, who had loads of money, could afford it quite easily. The peasants, on the other hand, as we know, had very little money. So they thought it was really unfair that because they've got so little money, why do they have to pay the same amount as the rich? It's not fair. So they were really angry about that, and that is one of the main reasons why in the end they end up revolting in 1381. The second cause of the Peasants' Revolt that I'm going to talk about is to do with this group of peasants, the villeins. The villeins, not the villains, the villeins. Okay? Now the villeins are the peasants who have to work a certain number of days on the Lord's land for free. The Lord doesn't pay them to do this. They have to work there for free. They have to do this for the Lord. And again, they think that's really unfair. They don't own the Lord's land. The Lord owns it, and he's the one who's going to end up selling the crops and profiting from it. The peasants don't get anything out of this. They have to work there for no money. They don't get anything out of it. It's really hard work, and they think it's unfair. Why should they have to work on the Lord's land when they don't get anything out of it? They don't get any pay. They don't get any crops. All they get is tired from all the hard work that they're doing. So they think that's really unfair. They don't like having to work on the Lord's land for free. The other group of peasants who are also annoyed are the Freemen. Or the Freemen. They're annoyed because, if you'll remember, we talked about this in lesson, that the Freemen, after the Black Death, they end up earning quite a bit more money than they're used to. Beforehand, before the Black Death, they earned not that much money. And after the Black Death, lots of people have died. As we know, nearly half the country have died. So the Freemen are able to charge a lot more money for their work because no one else can do it. So they go to the Lord and say, actually, Mr. Lord, I would like double wages, or maybe even triple wages, maybe even more. Because they can do it. The Lord has to pay it, because who else is going to do the work? He has to pay them that amount of money. So they love this for about 4 or 5 years. They love this. They're earning a great deal of money for the same amount of work that they were doing before. And then the lords complain to the king. And the king comes out with something called the Statute of Labourers, which takes wages back to the amount that they were before the Black Death. So the peasants have had or freemen have had 4 or 5 years of earning a nice amount of money to going back to earning next to nothing, very little, and that annoys them. They've had a great few years, and then the king takes it all away from them, and they're not happy about that. So that's another reason why in 1381 they decide to revolt. Another reason that the peasants were angry, you can see why the revolt happens, because they're angry about so many things. Another reason why they're unhappy is because the new king, King Richard II, if you'll remember, when he becomes king, he is only a 10-year-old boy. And by the time the revolt happens, he's only 14. So he doesn't really know what he's doing to be the king. And what he has to rely on is his advisors. His advisors are the people who tell him what to do or give him advice on what to do. And the peasants think that these advisors are giving him bad advice. The reason why the kings are making such bad decisions, or King Richard is making such bad decisions, is because he's being advised very poorly by his advisors. So the peasants, they're not really angry at King Richard, because he's only a boy, he doesn't really know what he's doing. They're very angry at his advisors, because they're the reason why they're having a bit of a rubbish time of it, because the advisors are giving what they think King Richard is getting bad advice from them. So they're angry about that. So it's another reason why they revolt. And finally, lastly, the final reason I'm going to talk about is, you may remember there is a priest called John Ball who is arrested and locked up. And the reason why John Ball is locked up is because he has been telling the peasants that they are equal. Every man is born equal. So lords and peasants, equal. And the peasants quite like this. They quite like this idea. And they start to think, well, if we're equal, why are we, again, working on the Lord's land for nothing? Why are we paying so much tax when the Lords don't pay that much in the first place compared to us? So they really like the ideas that John Ball is coming out with, and then he gets locked up for them. So they're angry about that as well. So you can see all of these reasons, all 5 of those reasons, the poll tax, the fact that the villeins have to work on the Lord's land for free, the fact that the freemen aren't earning an awful lot of money, the fact that John Ball has been locked up, and the fact that the king's advisors are pretty rubbish in their opinion. All of those reasons, all 5 of those reasons combine to make the peasants incredibly angry, that in 1381 they get so angry that they end up revolting and marching all the way to London. And, well, what happens next is what I'm going to talk about in my next video.